Hello, this is my evaluation on the Naturalism performance. I'll start off with my vocals. Since the screen test, I think they've improved quite a bit. Doing that screen test, it opened my eyes a little bit to how I should use my voice. In particular, projection, a couple of idiosyncrasies. Pitch and tone as well. I think projection-wise, I've learned that because my character on the screen test was a bit, I had to watch my projection because I didn't want to be too loud or too quiet because of the camera. I worked on that and made sure that people could hear me all the way around the recital room, even when I was just on stage. Idiosyncrasies wise, I added a few into my character, like little giggles, and not like a girly giggle, but like a I know it's only a small one, but I thought it helped quite a bit. My pitch as well. I learned to vary my pitch a bit more, but I think at times it was a little bit too high. It was mainly at the shout, the bit where I flip out at the end and get really mad. I go a little bit off because my vocals have been fixed. My vocals were fixed as that character. So when I actually got to the shout bit, I was still having my throat and mouth in the same position, but it really pushed my vocals a little bit, and I did go really high pitched sometimes, which wasn't great. Strengths vocally, I think my accent stayed stiff throughout. I kept my character's voice the same the way through. I didn't slip back into my old voice or anything like that. I believe that I brought the character across quite well with my character, showing that it was a bit of a seedy man. Weaknesses wise, I think given a bit more time, I'd have worked on that last scene where we were shouting and things. Because I kept not screaming but going quite high pitched, and that was one of the things which I did have to I will have to sort out. As well, I think I have to watch my when I'm doing different accents. I do have to watch my diction sometimes. It's not a lot, but it's on because I get quite comfortable doing accents and stuff, and I just speak it like it's my own accent. I sometimes don't pronounce absolutely everything properly, but I think it's got better since other different accents that I've done, and I think I can improve that by going into different accents. For example, like Cockney, or like New York, or Liverpudlian or something like that. And work saying like tongue twisters, but film it, record it, and then listen to it back and see if I can actually hear the words. I thought that could help. And that's what I did I've done that for a performance. I did it for Mr. Mushnick in Little Shop of Horrors, because I found that accent extremely difficult to get into. When I finally got it, I was wondering whether I was just used to the words and I could understand what I was saying, or if it was something like just like a fault in my accent sort of thing. So I recorded them and played them back, and that really helped me articulate my words and everything. Myself in the group, in the actual performance itself, I think performance-wise, I think it could have gone better. There's not much doubt about that. But the thing is, with that show, I see it as three separate plays, because they're three very, very different people, and they're very, very loosely connected. So it was like we was doing 3 different pieces. So I can't really evaluate it properly for the other groups because I wasn't there during the rehearsal process for their scenes that much. I saw them a few times, and I saw like Lee and Claire do a couple of scenes, and I saw Lee and Eleanor do a couple of scenes, but I never actually got to see them during rehearsals that much at all, so I can't really evaluate how they'd come along and how they'd like improved and stuff, because I couldn't give you an accurate description on what they was like before. But just as the performance in itself, I think Lee and Eleanor's scene, I think it went okay. There was a few missed lines and bits and bobs, but it was covered up quite well from what I saw. The people that had come to watch, the audience, I don't think they noticed that much from the feedback that they'd given us. So that's always a good thing. And then Eleanor said that she'd had to cut it. She'd had to cut it because Lee had messed up a couple of lines and things. Apparently, she said that she'd thought it just cut it there, and hopefully there'd be no more mess ups or anything like that, and make it run smoother into the next scene rather than pausing and things. Then Ellie Mae and I think our scene went actually quite well, really well compared to what I thought it could have been like. It was very. The only problem was there was a little bit in it where we slipped up a line and there was a pause for like. Well, it felt like about 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm not really sure how long it was. But we covered it up quite well, like we made it as part of the character, like having a really, really awkward long pause in there. So I don't think the audience noticed, so that was quite well. And our characters really came out nicely in the performance, especially towards the end. The really sharp sides of our characters come out. And I was quite pleased with the performance in general. From our scene, I think we added a lot of things, not a lot of things, but we added some stuff on the spot, some blocking and movement, just as a bit of improv while we was actually on stage doing the performance, and rather than looking really tacky and not really well done, it actually looks all right. And then moving on to Lee and Claire's final scene, I think that went quite well. I believe some was skipped out. I'm not 100% sure, because I wasn't that used to their scene, and how, like, what parts of each scene came where, and so I'm not 100% sure what happened there, but again, I don't think the audience noticed that much, so that went okay. I think overall, even though the performance weren't perfect and polished, I think it could have gone a lot worse, considering how it was about a week before the performance. I think my my personal strength during my scene, I think I stayed in character really well. I tried my best to keep my vocals strong, and I did do really well, I believe. My blocking and movement and characterization, it did bring a little bit of improv out of it, which actually worked quite nicely. So I think that was quite good characterization. I didn't slip out my accent. I kept my performance strong, and we picked up when we did slip up. Like, sometimes little slip-ups are, like, inevitable, really. So I think rather than breaking down and maybe running off stage or something like that, we just rolled with the punches and made sure that it looked like part of the scene and not just a mess-up that we just had to quickly cover up. So I think that did quite well. Weaknesses were the fact that we did mess up. I suppose that is something to bring out. During rehearsal, the bits that we messed up on weren't the bits that we thought we'd mess up on in rehearsal, so there was bits we were really, really comfortable with. So we didn't really look too much at them bits, like we never used to have scripts for them or anything like that, like up to probably like 2 or 3 weeks before the performance, and it was really quite good. And it was little bits of that slipped up. So I think in hindsight, we should have worked a little more evenly across the scenes, across the difficult scenes and the easier scenes. But overall, it did. It was one of them things that, even though we did slip up, we did cover it over quite well. I suppose it just needed a little bit more preparation. When I don't know whether I'd class this as a weakness or not. I think not my character was wrong, but I think my character was a little bit different to what it should have been. I didn't really notice that much until about a week before the performance, that my character was slightly childish, like, not just childish in the sense that, like, an adult, like, messing around and being immature and that sort of childish. Like, a lot of my mannerisms come out as actually being, like, a teenager. I mean, the script says that my character was about 28 years old. But my playing age is a little bit younger than that, so we decided to take it down. But I still seemed a little bit like mid-teen, about like 17, 18 possibly, which it was only little things. I mean, I notice a lot more on myself than I notice on other people because I'm just quite critical of what I do. But that was one thing which I saw as a bit of a weakness. To prepare for this performance, I had a look at a lot of different, like, how teachers act around each other in the staff room rather than actually with pupils and things, because none of this performance was actually done in school, and I didn't have to perform like I had children around me or anything like that. And also, when I did Day in the Death of Joe Egg, I had to do a teacher, and I had to research how teachers are around pupils as opposed to not around pupils and things. So I kind of kept that in mind, how teachers can be completely different in school than they can be in their home life. So I kind of I made it so that teachers would be both ends of the spectrum, because in the script he's like a Captain Graham Tibbetson, and he's a CCF commando, and he's like always ordering like kids around and shouting at them for not having shining boots and being this really strong, dominant man. Whereas at home he becomes like a bit more of a mouse character-ish. So I put a lot of that into my own performance, and I thought that was quite a nice thing that fit in really well. I also looked at my costume and worked out how to use the costume as part of the performance, like without getting completely like naked or anything like that. I made sure that whilst it wasn't too revealing, that it didn't look like it didn't want to be revealing. Like sometimes people could do like a sexual scene or something like that, and they'd wear shorts that they wouldn't pull down or anything like that. But I thought it'd be quite effective to obviously keep my boxers on, but just have it boxers and a robe rather than like full dressed and just pretend. And it really, because I'm quite personally, I'm quite an awkward person. and I don't like people seeing bits of my body and all that lot. So I think a lot of myself went, like, because we had an audience and there was people watching which I don't really speak to and all that lot. Obviously, I don't want them seeing anything that isn't usually on the show. But I think it worked really well to add to my character, because my character had to be really awkward in the scene. And I actually genuinely felt awkward having that much flesh on show to people which I didn't really know. And I thought that brought out quite a nice little quality to it, because I was always covering myself up and being really conscious of it, like Graham would be in the show. Preparation material then. I read through the play a couple of times and checked and looked at how the different relationships work between different characters, and we did hot seating during one of the lessons, like a marriage counselling-esque one, to see what we could bring out of the characters that we potentially didn't actually know that we thought that could really bring out something special in them. We researched people that are very similar to our characters, so we could add little elements of that from someone who actually really is like that in real life, and basically get the most realism out of a character, out of the characters that we could. I just feel developed through the process. Through the process, I think I developed quite a lot. During the first couple of weeks, in all genuine honesty, I didn't like it. I thought it was awkward. I thought it was awful. I really just did not want to do this play. I would have rather done anything else. And Ellie felt the same, and we just didn't want to do the really, really awkward sex scene, because not only is it awkward in real life because it's like a sex scene, it's also awkward on stage. So you got to show awkwardness, but then you got to personally not feel awkward, otherwise the awkwardness might come across as just really too awkward, and it just wouldn't work, and it'd look really painful rather than like, oh, that looks awkward on stage. It'd just be quite hard to watch. But then as the week went by and we got our characters how we wanted them, and tried to make sure that our characteristics were all in there and our vocals were right. We started to get a bit more of a feel for the characters, and we thought, yes, it's going okay. But then I think Ellie took like about 80% of the script, I think, roughly, as in lines-wise. So there was a lot. Like, because I'm usually acting, I can walk around and I can like pick up a lamp or tidy up or walk over to people and talk to them or use my body. But this one, I just had to sit there and do like nothing. So it all had to be in like my facial expressions and the pause and the vocals rather than actual physicality, which was really, really difficult for me. That was my biggest problem with the whole thing. Because that was all the way up until about 2 weeks before the show that I just felt awful doing it. Because it just felt wrong that I had to just sit there. It felt like I wasn't being interesting and all that lot. But I couldn't exactly do anything. Like, I couldn't stand up and rearrange my room or anything like that, because that's just not what the piece is. So I found that really, really hard. But that developed over time. And when it got within like 2 weeks, 1 week of the performance, I think I just added a lot of little quirks into it, and tried to make it more realistic and special rather than me just sitting there looking like a gargoyle, just not doing anything in particular. And that was something that was I think it was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. But I think it's really good that we saw it through to the end and didn't give up, because now we've learnt a lot of skills like relating to this performance, and I think it's really nice. I think it's really nice how it actually turned out, because we were both happy with how it went. I think overall my performance did reflect the preparation that we took beforehand, because the scene was really awkward to do and everything like that. We always had to work a lot on our characterization and our scenes where I was just sat down and Ellie was stood up, and then we had to just move each other around the room and do the sex and everything like that. And I think even though no one was there apart from me and Ellie throughout the whole rehearsal process, I think it definitely 100% improved tenfold from what it were when we first started going through it, and that's because of the our research into our characters and things, and I hope it came out really well. The audience responded quite well. They laughed at funny bits, and they didn't do the typical student thing of, like, when there's a sex scene, giggling and pointing and everything like that. So obviously I think we managed to grab them and suck them into the characters, really, in that first scene with such like a high impact entrance of like being all over each other and everything like that, that they just immediately got sucked straight into it. So I think that was really good. Their feedback was that they thought it was really good how they started off feeling sorry for me because of how I acted and my characterization and things, and how Ellie was being towards me. But then as it went on, they slowly started to dislike me. And then by the end of it, they really just didn't like me at all, because I turned into this like psycho stalker, psychopath man. And they grasped that quite well, and they said that they really liked that. They liked the pauses. They thought it was a bit awkward at first, but there's lots of pauses in this show, and it really brought out the awkwardness in the characters, and it made the audience feel a little bit uncomfortable, which is, I think, what was intended, which was quite good. Overall, I think what I'd change is I'd give ourselves a few more weeks, maybe in the middle of the rehearsal process, just to iron out some of the more not boring parts, but more flat parts, and just try and add a little bit more of something, like work on characters a bit more, or make it a little bit more refined in places that we thought were completely sorted when they actually weren't, like because of like the slip up. I think I would have tried to add a few more facial expressions and research a few more people, like watch a few more people how they act that are very similar, just so I could get a bit of a wider spectrum of how to act around Ellie. Ellie's character. I'd have made the pace a little bit quicker. Not that it needed to be fast paced and everything like that, but I think being a faster pace could have helped the audience get a little bit even more dragged into it and get really on the edge of the seat at the end scene where I flip out and just basically force her to do the thing that she does. I think I'd have worked on my vocals a little bit more, and tried to make it not so screechy at the very end, but that was something that I thought it kind of worked with the character, but I wasn't happy about it. But I don't know whether that's me just being over analytical. I use yeah, I think overall that's roughly what I changed. Just I think it did go a lot better than I'd planned. I can't deny that. Not than I planned, but than I thought it could have gone. and I'm quite happy with how it went. I can't deny that at all. But given a bit more time, it wasn't massive changes. It was just subtle little things which I'm probably being over analytical about. But yeah, that was my evaluation on Under the Blue Sky.